Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you are all good. Just wanted to make a video today on prepping for a race. I'm gonna assume that, if you're watching this video, you probably have running in your training program with us at the moment. Obviously, there are some people that we coach that focus solely on the strength training and the bodybuilding style training, but most of the clients on the program are hybrid training to some degree, whether that means, you're doing 4 strength sessions and 1 run a week, or it could be a 3 and 3 split, whatever it is. So the reason that I wanted to make this video is I was actually having a conversation with one of our clients today in person when I was doing a session with her, and she's very much a performance focused client, although we are obviously working on her physique as well. She'd recently done a 10k race, and she was saying that she shouldn't feel lost, but she wanted to set that next performance goal. And that's something that I've kind of realized with my own training since I've been more performance focused alongside my physique training as well, is if I don't at least know that something is coming up, or I have a race in the pipeline that could be 8 months away, I just find that I lose a little bit of focus. Obviously I still get all my training done, but it's just not quite as exciting. So when I'm filming this, it's the 15th of February, and this is very much the time of the year where a lot of the people on the program are starting to think towards the summer in terms of summer holidays. In the UK, that tends to be kind of half marathon season when a lot of races are taking place between, I would say March and July. And towards the back end of the year, there might be some races in the UAE, the US, or other countries like that. But we're very much future framing with a lot of the clients, making them, map out the training for the next few months. And a lot of clients are entering races, whether that's 10Ks, half marathons, ultras, Ironmans, things like that. So just wanted to make a video today to run you over kind of what would go through our heads when we are prepping someone for a race, and what you would need to consider and understand if you are actually considering entering one yourself. So prepping for a race or a distance, it doesn't actually have to be a race where you pay for the ticket, you go to a certain location and you do the race. It could literally just be like, right, Joe, I want to run 10k on this date, and that's what I want to work towards. So it could be an organized race where it's actually in a city or a country or whatever, or it could just be a planned distance in your program. Essentially, it's something that we are aiming for, which will ultimately determine the structure and the format of your training program. And because obviously we are very performance focused with a lot of the clients on the program, it is a natural progression within a lot of the clients' training programs. A lot of people will come to us and they may have never run more than 3k before. Then the first goal is usually getting them to achieve a 5k. Then it's a 10k, and then once you're starting to tick those distances, you kind of almost get the bug and you're looking for what's next. So for me, like when I started running, I did a half marathon fairly quickly, and then I wanted to actually enter a half marathon race and test myself like for a time, and then I wanted to do a marathon, and now I've got 2 races planned this year at least. I'm doing a half marathon in April. I'm going to do another marathon at the end of the year. So my kind of training is mapped out for the next few months, and it makes the whole kind of process and prospect of the rest of the year really, really exciting. And we do find that once clients have done one race, they want to increase their distance or they want to increase their time. So it's really important to understand that there's a distinct difference between just actually turning up and doing a race and actually prepping for one. So if someone said to me, do you want to jump into this race in a month's time? I've got 3 or 4 weeks to train. It's not really enough to actually prep for it. I'm just turning up and doing the race and giving it my best shot. Or if I actually said, okay, I want to do a half marathon in August, I'm going to prep for that for 12 weeks. That's very, very different, because you can move you through different phases of training and actually build a lot of fitness within that training prep. So it's definitely important to cover mindset and that side of things when you are prepping for a race. So obviously we need a date, a distance, and a time in mind. Then we as coaches can actually put your training program together. Even if it's your first attempt, okay, it could be your first 10k. Even if you've not got any really specific times in mind, it would be good for us to know, where we are aiming within, 5 to 10 minutes. So then we can actually write the training program, because as you'll see in a second at the end of the video, a lot of the runs that you'll be doing when you're prepping for a race or a distance, we will give you time guidelines, and that will obviously be determined by the time that you actually want to run that distance or race in. It goes without saying, like every aspect of the program, strength training, running, cardio, whatever it is, we should always be aiming for 100% compliance. Obviously I do understand when there are missed sessions sometimes due to travel, external stresses and stuff like that, but if we've got you on a race prep, we want you to give it your best effort and try and maintain 100% compliance at all times. Otherwise you're going to be missing key workouts. For example, if you really want to run a quick half marathon or a marathon or something like that, and you're missing those speed sessions, you're not going to develop as much fitness and as much speed as you could as if you obviously did them. Understand it will be hard, and I don't just mean the actual race on the day. Obviously that's going to be hard. It's the process that is much harder. You know, you have to be able to time manage. You have to be able to tick off all your training sessions. You have to work it around your strength training, which obviously we will help you with as well. But that's often the reason that people do these things. It's not actually to do the race and get that time. It's to develop as a person in the process. And you know, I prep for multiple races, photo shoots and stuff like that, and that you really, really do develop. And I do find that when I prep for things myself, every other aspect of my life improves. You know, I generally get much better at managing my time. Business generally improves. I tend to enjoy the training more as well, but it is hard, obviously, it goes without saying. And it's hard because like one aspect of that would be, you know, your training volume is generally going to be higher in a race prep for that period of time. It's not forever. You know, if it was a half marathon, generally 10 to 12 weeks, you're probably going to be running more on that prep than you would be, you know, in a base building phase. And you know, if you were going to run a 10k or whatever, you'd be running more then as well. Like when I did a half marathon prep, I was running 4 times a week. I'm only running 3 times a week now because I'm not prepping for that right now. So yeah, there will usually be an increase in volume, but obviously we will speak to you about that and assess your current routine and figure out what works for you, because it's not as though, you know, okay, we want to run a half marathon, we have to be doing 4 runs a week. That's not the case. We've prepped people for half marathons off just 2 runs a week. Probably wouldn't recommend it, but you can definitely do it. Your program may change as well. So for someone that is time deprived and you can't just add on more training sessions, we may need to sacrifice a strength training session and replace that with an endurance session. But what we will always endeavor to do is condense your training volume into less training sessions so that you don't actually miss out on volume on certain muscle groups. So a lot of people, you know, a big objection that we'll get or we'll hear in the industry is, you know, if you start doing more endurance, you're going to lose muscle. There's so many more factors that go into it. Yes, that could be possible, but we will always try and avoid that by, as I say, still hitting that weekly volume in less strength training sessions, and obviously sleep, rest, recovery, and nutrition will come into it as well. But just accept that your program might change if you are time deprived. Coaching during a race prep, this is kind of standard stuff anyway, but like communication is key as always. But you know, as I said before, your training volume is going to be higher. We're going to potentially need to look a little bit more closely at your nutrition. We'll certainly be being a little bit more attentive in regards to recovery in your check-ins, and make sure that you're just actually handling that increase in training volume well, and we're not overdoing it. You know, a few of the clients on the program, they have wearable devices like Whoops, Oura rings and things like that, and we're looking at their recovery, their HRV and stuff like that, which will be very useful indicators for us to see whether you're overdoing things. Like you obviously will build a lot of fitness in a race prep if you're recovering properly, but at the same time, like you might notice that your recovery is down because you're doing more training and potentially not putting in the kind of requisite time in the recovery aspect of things, which obviously will help you with as well. As I say, potentially extra support for nutrition and fueling strategies. All I mean by that is we might need to, for example, implement days where you're consuming more calories and more carbs to support your training. Like we're always going to be giving you, you know, high level attention with your nutrition and fueling at all times anyway, even if you weren't prepping for a race. As I say, managing performance versus recovery weekly. Like again, when I was doing that half marathon prep, I did notice some weeks that I was very fatigued, so I needed to adapt my training. Obviously spoke to my own coach about that as well, so we'll help you with that too. It goes without saying, make sure to check in every single week and communicate with us outside of these if you need advice. So don't think that you can only speak to us through the check-ins, message us on WhatsApp with any questions as well. So program setup and distances and things like that. So generally what we would go for, this will be dependent on the client. Like for example, we're prepping a few people for a half marathon now, but we only have 9 weeks to do it. You can adapt training programs very easily, but in an ideal world, this is what we go for. Obviously, if you wanted to PB or 5 or 10K, we would generally do an 8-week program. If you wanted to run or PB a half marathon, you'd be looking at 12 weeks ideally. As I say, you could do it off 8 to 12 weeks, like I've done that before with people. And then for a marathon, again, it would depend on the client. But generally, if you really want to make the most of it, I'd recommend 16 weeks for a marathon. You can build a lot of fitness there. So that's what we'll be looking at. That's the kind of time availability that you need. But you know, if it's a week or so off, that's fine. Program setup, so how many runs per week? Like as I've kind of repeated myself many times in this video, it really does depend on the client and their situation, but generally I would say 3 to 4 runs a week. I think if you're doing any less than that whilst prepping for a race, certainly a half marathon, you're probably doing yourself a disservice. And like with running and endurance training, like more volume really kind of does lead to better results, provided obviously that your recovery is on point. So if you can manage 3 or 4 runs a week, you're probably going to run a better time, provided that you're recovered there. As I said before, 2 is possible, but 3 would be better. For a 5 or a 10K, it doesn't really matter, but for a half marathon and a marathon, I would recommend running at least 3 times a week, definitely. The structure of your runs as well will depend on your ability and goals. So, for example, someone that just actually wants to run a distance like a 10K or a half marathon for the first time, we're looking at just kind of actually getting them through that distance and building the confidence that they can do that. So there's generally going to be less speed work in their program. There's more focus on just getting them through that and ticking the box. And then the next time they do it, they might have some baseline numbers. So if someone runs a half marathon in 2 hours and 10 minutes, okay, we've got that data. We know what we need to do then next time to get them under 2 hours, for example. If you've got a more advanced client, like we have some people, had someone come to us a couple of months ago who was a very good runner. He wanted to go under 3 hours for the marathon, and so his program immediately had a lot of speed work in. So generally, the more advanced the individual is, the more speed work we'll put in the program. Again, it all depends on time availability as well. And I just wanted to finish the video by running you over an example of 2 running programs that we have. Again, we would adapt this for the person and their ability level, their times, and how much time they have. But for a half marathon template, for example, someone that wants to run 2 hours, we'll be looking at 3 runs a week, easy runs, ideally earlier on in the week, almost recovery runs, between 6 to 8K, it might take you between 35 to 55 minutes, interval speed work midweek, and generally we'd be getting you used to running at your target half marathon pace. As I said before, even if it's your first time, it would be good to have a rough time in mind that we want to hit. And then on the weekend for a half marathon and marathon prep, we would be building your long runs up to give you the confidence that you can actually run that distance. And generally what we do with everyone is we'd build for 3 weeks in terms of volume and intensity, and in the 4th week we would take a recovery week, you can see here. So that is a fairly straightforward half marathon plan, and then a much more advanced marathon plan that we had someone do a few months ago. This was obviously 6 runs a week, which we don't have anyone running that much at the moment. To be honest, I would not recommend it. Bearing in mind that most of our clients strength train at least 2 or 3 times a week. So this client actually had to do strength training sessions on the same day and things like that. But I would generally say for a marathon, like ideally 3 or 4 a week, definitely. But you can see here it was actually 3 or 4 easy runs, and then a long run on the weekend that integrated running at his target half marathon pace, and then he had speed work earlier on in the week as well, and then speed work twice a week. So just gives you a little bit of an insight into what something might look like. But I hope that video was helpful, and it gives you a little bit more of an idea of what a race prep might look like for you.